My mother-in-law and I were at the title company to finalize what she called the smartest financial move our family would ever make. While she stepped into the hallway to take a phone call, the paralegal slid a folded piece of paper under my hand and whispered without looking up, "Don't sign anything. Walk out. Now." I had no idea that those 5 words were about to save everything my father spent a lifetime building for me. That morning started the way most Tuesday mornings did. My mother-in-law was already at our kitchen table when I came downstairs, a habit she had developed over the past several months, showing up before I was even fully awake, always with some new urgency, some new plan that required my immediate participation. She had a folder open in front of her and a cup of my coffee in her hand. She smiled when she saw me. That smile I had spent 4 years trying to earn it. Wide and warm, the kind of smile you'd see in a retirement community advertisement. She reached across the table and patted my hand. "Rachel, sweetheart, today is going to be such a good day for this family. I just feel it." My husband, Marcus, was already dressed for work. He kissed me on the cheek without fully looking at me, grabbed his jacket from the hook by the door, and said he had an early job site to get to. "Mom will explain everything. You trust her, right?" He was already turning the door handle. "I'll meet you both at Garrett and Associates at 10. Sign whatever she has ready. It's going to be good for us, I promise." He was gone before I could ask a single question. My mother-in-law opened the folder and began walking me through what she called a family investment restructuring. My father had passed away 14 months earlier. He left me the house I grew up in, a 3-bedroom Craftsman on the east side of Millbrook, paid off completely, and an investment account with $180,000 he had saved over 40 years of working as a high school shop teacher. He was not a wealthy man. That money was everything he had. He had told me more than once that it was my safety net, not to touch it unless I truly needed it, and never to let anyone else touch it at all. My mother-in-law tapped the folder. "Your father's estate is just sitting there doing nothing, Rachel. Meanwhile, Marcus's contracting business needs capital to take on that new development project. If we consolidate everything under a family trust, which I would manage, since Marcus and I both have experience with these things, the money works harder, the tax benefits are significant, and everything stays in the family." She folded her hands. "All you have to do is sign the authorization documents today. It's really that simple." Something felt off. I couldn't name it then, but my stomach tightened the way it did when I forgot something important and couldn't remember what. I asked her if we could wait until I'd had a chance to read everything myself. She tilted her head slightly, and her smile cooled by a few degrees. "Of course. Though the rate window closes by end of week, and Marcus really needs this to come through. But it's up to you." That was how she always did it. Give you the illusion of a choice with just enough pressure around the edges that declining felt like a personal failure. We arrived at Garrett and Associates Title Company at 5 minutes to 10. The lobby smelled like recycled air and carpet cleaner. A receptionist pointed us to a conference room at the end of the hall. My mother-in-law took the seat at the head of the table and began removing documents from her folder with the efficiency of someone who had done this before. The paralegal assigned to our appointment was a woman in her mid-40s with reading glasses pushed up on her forehead and a yellow legal pad in her hand. Her name placard said Janet. She reviewed the documents my mother-in-law set out, page by page, her expression professionally neutral. My mother-in-law's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and stood up. "I have to take this. It'll be 2 minutes." She walked into the hallway and pulled the glass door nearly shut behind her. Janet looked at the door. Then she looked at me. She moved quickly and quietly, the way someone moves when they've made a decision they know has consequences. She lifted the top page of the document stack, pressed a small folded note into my palm, and set the page back down without a word. She was already writing on her legal pad again before my fingers closed around the paper. I kept my face still. My heart was not still at all. I unfolded the note beneath the table. The handwriting was small and deliberate. "These documents transfer full control of the inherited property and investment account to Diane Calloway. You will retain nothing. Do not sign. If you need help, I'm here." I read it twice. Then I folded it and pressed it into the pocket of my blazer. My mother-in-law returned. She set her phone face down on the table and picked up her pen. "All right. Where were we?" She slid the signature pages toward me. "Marcus is running a few minutes behind, but he said to go ahead and start." I looked at the line where my name was supposed to go. My father's handwriting was in a frame on my desk at home. "Rachel, this house and everything in it belongs to you. Guard it well." I pressed my foot against the floor and made a decision I had never made in 4 years of marriage. I put my hand on my stomach. "I'm so sorry," I said. "I think something I ate this morning. I feel really sick all of a sudden." "I can't. I need a few minutes." I stood up and walked quickly toward the hallway bathroom. My mother-in-law called after me, her voice shifting from sweet to sharp in less than a second. "Rachel, we're almost done. It'll take 5 minutes." I went into the bathroom and locked the door. I pulled out my phone and called my cousin Daniel, who worked at a real estate law firm across town. I spoke in a low voice and told him exactly what the note said. There was a pause on his end. "Don't sign a single page," he said. "Leave if you can. I'm pulling the property records right now." I waited 3 minutes, then walked back out. My mother-in-law was standing near the conference room door. Her expression was the kind that doesn't raise its voice in professional settings but makes very clear that a conversation is coming. "Better?" she asked. "Actually, no," I said. "I think I need to go home. I'm so sorry. Can we reschedule?" The drive home was the longest 15 minutes of my recent life. My cousin called back before I reached my street. His voice was careful. "Rachel, the deed on the Millbrook property was altered. There's a quitclaim deed filed 6 weeks ago that transfers ownership to Diane Calloway. Your signature is on it." I pulled over. He kept talking. "It looks like it was filed alongside a stack of business loan documents. Do you remember signing anything for the company about 2 months ago? Marcus may have buried it." I remembered. A Sunday afternoon, Marcus rushing through paperwork at the kitchen table, telling me the bank needed signatures on a credit line extension before Monday morning. He had the pages tabbed, told me where to sign, and I had trusted him. I hadn't read a word. I sat in my car on a quiet residential street and understood, with complete clarity, that my husband had been planning this for a long time. That evening I did what I had always done when things were difficult. I kept my face normal. I made dinner. I asked Marcus about his day and listened while he talked about lumber costs and subcontractor delays. He was a good liar. I had simply never had a reason to notice before. After he fell asleep, I went to the kitchen table and opened my laptop. I searched the name I had found on the county property record, the name listed as a secondary party on my investment account, transfer authorization, the one filed 3 weeks ago that I had not signed at all. Brooke Whitfield. She wasn't hard to find. Her Instagram was public. A woman in her early 30s, professionally dressed in most photos, a few pictures at job sites that matched the aesthetic of a construction or development company. And then, posted 6 weeks ago, a photo of her sitting at a dinner table with my mother-in-law on one side and my husband's younger brother on the other. Her hand rested on her stomach in the particular way that women do when they're newly pregnant and can't quite stop touching the evidence of it. My mother-in-law was beaming. My brother-in-law had his arm around Brooke's shoulder like she was already family. The caption was from my mother-in-law's account, tagged to Brooke's. "So grateful for this new chapter. Our family grows." I sat with that for a long time. The next morning I drove to my cousin's office, and we went through everything together. The quitclaim deed on the house was real and had been filed correctly, meaning it would hold up in court unless we could prove fraud or coercion. The investment account transfer authorization bore a signature that looked like mine but wasn't. My cousin's colleague, a forensic document specialist, confirmed it in writing within 48 hours. "This is forged," she said, sliding her report across the desk. "Your signature has a consistent leftward pressure pattern. This one doesn't. Whoever did this got the shape right but not the mechanics." My mother-in-law had apparently either signed it herself or had someone else do it. Either way, it was fraud. I did not confront anyone. I went home and continued being the wife I had always been, because I had learned from a note written by a paralegal I barely knew that my best protection was the assumption that I didn't know anything yet. I ordered a small recording device online. It arrived the following afternoon and I activated it in the living room while my mother-in-law was there, because she had taken to spending entire afternoons at our house now. She and Marcus had phone calls I wasn't invited to. They spoke in lowered voices that normalized itself slowly enough that I'd barely registered the shift until I was already on the outside of it. On the third afternoon the recorder was active. I was upstairs when I heard my mother-in-law's voice rise slightly. She was on the phone, and her voice carried. "She still hasn't signed anything. I don't know what Janet said to her, but she's been stalling since Tuesday." A pause. "Brooke can't wait much longer, Marcus. She's almost 5 months. If we're going to get her settled before the baby comes, we need that account. The house I can work around, but the 180 is what matters. Another pause. Then you need to push harder. Tell her it's for your mother's health. Tell her whatever you want. You know how to handle Rachel. She always caves when you make it about the family. I sat on the top step of the stairs and listened to my mother-in-law tell my husband how to manipulate me, and I felt something I hadn't expected to feel. Not grief, not rage, something colder and more useful. Clarity. I had the recording. A week later, Marcus came home with flowers, which he hadn't done since the 2nd year of our marriage. He made dinner himself, which he also hadn't done in memory. He poured wine and sat across from me and told me he'd been under enormous stress and hadn't been present enough, and he was sorry. He reached across the table and took my hand. I know the trust documents have been sitting there, and you've been worried. I get it. But Rachel, this is for us. For our future. The business is on the edge of something really big, and we just need this one bridge to get there. My mom just wants to help us get there faster. He looked at me with the same eyes I had looked into at our wedding, and I had to remind myself what I had heard from the top of the stairs. You're right, I said. I've been overthinking it. Can we maybe do it this weekend? I want to feel ready. He exhaled and squeezed my hand and smiled, and I smiled back, and we finished dinner, and I thought about how my father used to say that the most dangerous people aren't the ones who hate you. They're the ones who need something from you and have mistaken that need for love. My cousin Daniel filed for an emergency asset freeze the following Thursday. His colleague drafted a civil fraud complaint citing the forged authorization and the coerced quitclaim deed. They also filed a complaint with the State Attorney General's office regarding the fraudulent document. The court date was set for a Monday, 2 weeks out. That weekend, my in-laws hosted a dinner party. It had been planned for a month, my father-in-law's retirement celebration, 30 years with the same engineering firm. The guest list included extended family, his former colleagues, a few of Marcus's business partners, and, as my mother-in-law had announced just the week before with barely concealed delight, their dear friend Brooke Whitfield, who had become like family. Marcus had told me to wear something simple. It's a family dinner, not a gala. Don't outshine Mom's moment. He said it lightly, like a joke, but he watched my face when he said it. I wore something simple. I also brought a copy of the forensic signature analysis, a printed transcript of the recording, and a USB drive with both the audio and the documentation my cousin had compiled. I had given a second copy to Daniel for safekeeping. The dinner was held at my in-laws' home. My mother-in-law had rented round tables and hired a caterer, and by the time we arrived, the backyard was lit with bistro lights and filled with about 60 people. My father-in-law, a quiet and genuinely kind man who I believe knew nothing of what his wife had been doing, greeted me warmly at the door. Brooke arrived 45 minutes into the evening. My mother-in-law met her at the gate with the same beaming expression I had seen in the Instagram photo. She guided her to the best seat at the center table, adjusted a cushion behind her back, and handed her a glass of sparkling water. My husband materialized at Brooke's side within seconds. He touched the small of her back in a way that was not professional and not subtle. A few of the guests glanced at each other. Some didn't need to glance because they already knew. I stood near the drinks table and watched this happen and breathed through it. My mother-in-law gave a short speech about family and legacy and how grateful she was for everyone gathered. She said that families grow and evolve and that new chapters are always cause for celebration. She gestured toward Brooke, who lowered her eyes modestly. A few people applauded. Then my mother-in-law said, and I'm especially grateful for the financial security Marcus and I have worked so hard to establish so that we can welcome new life into a stable home. Some sacrifices were necessary, but every decision was made with this family's future in mind. I set down my glass. I walked to the small wireless speaker my mother-in-law had set up near the door and connected my phone to it via Bluetooth. She had left it paired to an open connection because she'd been playing background music from her own phone all evening. I disconnected her device and connected mine. "Excuse me," I said, and my voice carried across the backyard with a steadiness I had practiced for 3 days. Every face turned toward me. My mother-in-law's expression shifted. Marcus took a step forward. "I wanted to say something about family too," I said. "Since we're celebrating legacy," I looked at my father-in-law first, because he deserved an apology for what he was about to hear in his own backyard, and whatever I saw in his face told me that on some level he was not entirely surprised. "I'm sorry," I said quietly to him. He gave a small nod. Then I pressed play. My mother-in-law's voice came through the speaker at full volume. She still hasn't signed anything. Brooke can't wait much longer. If we're going to get her settled before the baby comes, we need that account. The backyard went completely silent. Then you need to push harder. Tell her it's for your mother's health. Tell her whatever you want. You know how to handle Rachel. She always caves. I watched Marcus's face go through 4 different expressions in about 2 seconds. I turned off the audio. That investment account she's referring to is the money my father saved for 40 years and left to me when he died 14 months ago. 6 weeks ago, a quitclaim deed was filed transferring my inherited home to my mother-in-law's name. It contains a forged signature. I held up the forensic report. This is the signature analysis confirming the forgery, prepared by a certified document examiner. I held up the second document. And this is the emergency asset freeze filed in Millbrook County Court last Thursday. Someone at the back table stood up. My father-in-law's former supervisor, a man in his 70s who had known the family for decades. "Is this true, Diane?" he said. My mother-in-law had gone the color of the tablecloth. Marcus stepped toward me, his voice low and dangerous. "Rachel, you need to stop right now." "I'm almost done," I said. I looked at Brooke. I want to be clear that I felt no particular anger toward her. She had not forged my signature. She had not tricked me into signing a quitclaim deed. She had participated in something she should not have, but the people who owed me a marriage and a home were standing 10 feet away from her. "Your baby is innocent," I said. "I genuinely hope your child has a better foundation than what's being built here." Brooke looked down at the table. My mother-in-law attempted to recover. She stood up, spread her hands, and used the voice she used for church committees and PTA meetings. "Everyone, I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding. Rachel has been under a lot of stress since her father passed, and she's Diane." My father-in-law said her name once, quietly, and she stopped. Several guests began leaving. 2 of my mother-in-law's friends remained at their table, visibly uncomfortable, unsure whether loyalty or decency should win. My father-in-law's former supervisor shook his head and walked to the gate without speaking to anyone. My cousin Daniel arrived at 8:15, as planned, with his colleague from the law firm. They came through the side gate and my mother-in-law saw them, and the performance fell away entirely. What remained was just her face, older than it usually looked, stripped of the warmth she performed so reliably. "We are formally notifying all parties present," Daniel said, "that an emergency injunction is in effect freezing all assets, real property, and financial accounts registered to or transferred by Diane Calloway and Marcus Calloway, pending investigation into fraudulent property conveyance and document forgery. Any attempt to move, transfer, or encumber these assets constitutes contempt of court." Marcus sat down on one of the catered chairs. He sat the way people sit when their legs give out rather than when they choose to sit. He looked at his mother, and I think for the first time he understood that she had not been doing this for him. She had been doing it for the version of the family she wanted, and he had been as much a tool in that plan as I had, just a more willing one. Brooke gathered her bag and walked to the gate on her own. She stopped beside me for a moment. She didn't say anything. I didn't either. She left. I walked out through the front door and sat in my car for a while. The bistro lights in the backyard were still on, casting their warm glow over the catered tables and the half-eaten food and the people who remained, speaking to each other in lowered voices. My father-in-law came outside about 20 minutes later and knocked on my car window. I rolled it down. "I didn't know about the documents," he said. "I want you to know that." "I know," I said. He stood there for a moment in the night air. "Your father was a good man. What he left you should stay yours." He didn't say anything else. He went back inside. The legal process that followed was neither quick nor simple, but it moved in one direction. The forensic evidence was clear. The recording established intent to defraud. The quitclaim deed was nullified on the grounds of coercion and fraudulent inducement. The investment account, which had never actually been transferred due to the frozen authorization, remained in my name throughout. The family home in Millbrook was returned to my ownership by court order 11 weeks after the dinner party. In the divorce proceedings, Marcus's attorney argued that he had acted under his mother's influence and had not personally benefited. The judge was not persuaded. I was awarded the inherited property in full. along with a settlement that accounted for the 4 years during which company finances had been commingled with my personal earnings. Marcus's contracting business collapsed 3 months after the legal proceedings began, in part because 2 of his major clients were at the dinner party and had heard the recording through a backyard speaker. Brooke gave birth to a healthy baby girl in the spring. From what I heard through mutual acquaintances, she relocated to another city and filed her own civil claim against Marcus for misrepresented financial stability. Whatever love had existed between them, it had apparently been built on the same foundation as everything else in his life. My mother-in-law was charged with 2 counts of document fraud and 1 count of financial elder abuse, the last charge stemming from an unrelated matter involving my father-in-law's retirement accounts that came to light during the investigation. She reached a plea agreement that included 3 years of probation, mandatory restitution, and a permanent prohibition from serving as a trustee or financial agent for any other person. She and my father-in-law separated, though I don't believe he filed for divorce. He moved into a smaller house across town and, as far as I know, sends her grocery money every 2 weeks because he is the kind of man who honors commitments, even when the commitments have stopped honoring him. My father-in-law sent me a note after the settlement was finalized. It was brief. It said, "Your father raised you right. I'm sorry my family couldn't see that while it mattered." I kept the note in the same drawer where I keep my father's letters. Janet, the paralegal who wrote me that note at the title company, reached out through my cousin after the case was resolved. She told me she had worked at Garrett & Associates for 11 years and had seen documentation like mine come across the desk twice before, once for an elderly man whose nephew was trying to strip him of his rental income, and once for a young couple whose mortgage broker had buried a second lien in a stack of routine paperwork. Both times, she had not said anything, and both times those people had lost what they should not have lost. She said she had decided she wasn't going to let that happen a third time, even if it cost her the job. It didn't. Her employer backed her completely once the fraud was established. I bought her dinner at a restaurant of her choosing. We sat across from each other and I told her that 5 words on a folded piece of paper had changed the entire trajectory of my life, and she said that was a lot of pressure to put on someone's handwriting. We both laughed, and it was the first time I had laughed that way in a long time, the kind that comes up without permission and doesn't apologize for itself. A year after that Tuesday morning at the title company, I opened a small interior design studio out of the craftsman house my father left me. I converted the sunlit front room with the wide bay windows into a client meeting space. I kept the rest of the house exactly as he had kept it, the worn wooden floors and the kitchen cabinets he had painted himself the summer before he got sick, and the backyard garden that had gone to seed but came back the following spring on its own. The studio is called Cornerstone Design. My father would have called it a good name for a good reason. He believed that everything worth building starts with something solid underneath it. Most mornings I'm there before anyone else, with coffee and the kind of quiet that used to make me feel lonely and now just feels like mine. Clients come and go, projects get built. The light through the bay window changes color across the day in a way my father must have noticed for 30 years and which I am only now learning to see. Some evenings I sit at his kitchen table and think about the version of myself who almost signed those documents. Who would have handed over everything because she had confused being trusted with being trustworthy and had never stopped to ask which one the people around her actually were. I am not angry at her. She was doing what she had been taught to do, which was to believe that family meant safety and that love meant compliance. I know better now. So does the woman who comes to work in that sunlit room every morning, wearing her father's name and the title of the company she built on what he left behind. The foundation is solid, everything above it is hers.